This is VK3CSJ in Narre Warren South. Please stand by for this morning's WIA broadcast at 9 a.m. on 1825 kHz in the 160 metre amateur radio band.
This national news edition originates from VK1WIA and is rebroadcast throughout Australia and around the world under a common licence published on the WIA website. This WIA national news service is copyright to the Wireless Institute of Australia and rebroadcast is authorised only under the provisions of that common licence. WIA Director and Company Secretary Peter Cleave, VK8ZZ.
It's time to get your news on. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
And this week, the news that matters: why does the news have a common licence? WIA Secretary VK8ZZ Peter Cleave explains. Giles Kirby, Director of the Wireless Institute of Australia and the long-term health of amateur radio here in Australia. Phil Waite, VK2 ASD, and more teaching aids and publicity materials coming your way from our Education Committee. Weather and traffic every week in Radio Traffic News, VI8POL in September. Paul, VK5PAS, joins us. Cats and dogs on the air this month, and with your Trans-Tasman results, VK4SN Alan Shannon. Radio Weather News, a look up above for amateur astronomers. Look out for SX17 Astro. And just last month, July 22, Earth had the second shortest day on record. Why? Stay tuned. Now wait, there's more, much more, in this edition of news from the Wireless Institute of Australia. Now, in case you're wondering, or you're one of our new viewers, listeners, I'm Editor Graham, VK4 Baker.
This is your WIA news. Often imitated, never duplicated.
This is to formally advise that the rebroadcast stations of the WIA National News will now need to comply with the provisions of the Common Licence, which came into effect at the end of July. Stations wishing to rebroadcast the weekly WIA National News will need to comply with the provisions of a Common Licence, which is now in effect. The board have introduced this because a few broadcast stations had been making changes, deleting sections, or only utilising part of the national news broadcast without seeking permission to do so. There will be no significant change to rebroadcast arrangements for most rebroadcast stations. The Common Licence is published on the WIA website and details some important aspects which need to be followed by rebroadcast stations. The Common Licence states that the content of the broadcast is copyright to the Wireless Institute of Australia. Ownership of the content is retained by the Wireless Institute of Australia, and that the content of the broadcast shall not be modified, edited or used to create derivative works without prior written consent from the Secretary of the WIA. A copy of the Common Licence is available at the text edition of this broadcast or on the WIA News website. Rebroadcast stations who cannot meet the requirements of the Common Licence should contact the WIA Secretary for advice. A couple of clubs have already contacted me to clarify their situation. Notification of the copyright provisions and the requirement to follow the Common Licence has already been included at the beginning of this broadcast and will continue to be included. This has been WIA Company Secretary Peter Cleave, VK8ZZ.
This is Giles Kirby, Director of the Wireless Institute of Australia, with a quick update from the boardroom. One recent focus of the WIA board has been on refining our strategic direction for the next epoch to ensure that long-term health of amateur radio in Australia. We continually review our strategic priorities to align with our core values, including advocacy, member value, and sustainability. Advocacy remains central, ensuring your voice is heard in regulatory discussions with the ACMA as spectrum use evolves. We're also looking ahead, building a roadmap that not only protects our current interests, but also positions the hobby for future growth in a rapidly changing technology environment. Thanks for your support as we continue this important work. As always, please reach out if you have thoughts or ideas. We have strength as a community. Stay curious, stay connected, and most of all, keep transmitting. 73s from the board, this is VK5 Golf Kilo signing off.
Hi, this is Phil Waite, VK2ASD. Have you taken a look at the WIA's Education Committee website recently? There, you will find a trove of information for potential new amateurs and teaching aids for WIA-affiliated clubs. In the Club Resources section, you will also find some new publicity materials, including an original series of brochures showing the various facets of amateur radio and particularly aimed at attracting newcomers into the hobby. We intend to expand this collection over time to include more teaching aids and more publicity materials, and best of all, everything on the WIA committee website is downloadable and free to use by WIA affiliated clubs. So, keep looking at the WIA's Education Committee website from time to time at www.education.wia.org.au and see what's new.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now with international news, Jason, VK2LAW.
Hello. Leading this week's international news, AMSAT submits formal objection to AST Space Mobile Plan. FCC records 2,220 comments. The public comment period has officially closed for FCC Space Bureau Docket 25-201, which reviewed a request by AST and Science LLC, AST Space Mobile, to use the 430 to 440 MHz band for telemetry, tracking and command operations. This spectrum includes 435 to 438 MHz, a critical allocation for our amateur satellite service. AMSAT submitted formal comments opposing the proposal, citing the extensive non-commercial use of 435 to 438 MHz by amateur satellites, including Oscar-class spacecraft, educational CubeSats, and the ARIS station onboard the International Space Station. AMSAT also highlighted ongoing interference caused by AST's Blue Walker 3 satellite, 437.500 MHz, which has disrupted InspireSat-1. The filing urges the Commission to deny AST's request and preserve the integrity of the amateur satellite service. To Suffolk, England. If you took part in the IARU HF Championship on the second weekend of July, and you happened to work one of the 5 stations operating from the grounds of Euston Estate in Suffolk, England, you were also a part of the field test for the World Radio Sport Team Championship taking place next year. Despite some minor issues, the exercise was declared a success, right down to the report from the operators that there were no issues with interference between stations, which were running 100 watts. The organisers wrote on the WRTC website, quote, "Activity will be different next year. Hopefully 10 metres will be more cooperative and the interest in chasing 50 real WRTC stations will be higher," end quote. To the subcontinent, Kolkata, India, as many as 27 police officials from the rank of inspector to assistant commissioners from the state and Kolkata police received hands-on training on ham radio at the Administrative Training Institute recently. The main purpose of the training was to educate the learners how to establish communication through ham radio at a time when the standard communication system is jeopardised after a natural calamity. They also learned how to send signals through ham radio and the law of the central government on radio communication. Police were trained on how to send important messages through ham radio sets during such an emergent situation. The Puerto Rico Telecommunications Bureau, NET in Spanish, has expanded the island's amateur radio bank through a new collaboration agreement. reinforcing its role in emergency communications during natural disasters and other critical events. In compliance with the mandate of Act 213 of 1996, the Net maintains an amateur radio bank whose duty is to be activated in emergency situations where traditional communications may be affected, said Net President Osvaldo Soto Garcia. We're pleased to continue establishing new agreements and adding more amateur radio organisations to our communications emergency response team. The updated initiative designates participating amateur radio operators, known as KP4s, as first responders. Volunteers will receive preferential credentials to support their mobility and coordination in the field during emergencies. RSGB has released a new high-contrast logbook designed to support amateur radio operators with visual impairments or learning difficulties. Responding to feedback from members and accessibility advocates, the RSGB developed the logbook with wider spacing and a high-contrast black and yellow design to improve ease of use. This release reflects the RSGB's wider commitment to improving accessibility across all areas of the society and amateur radio as a whole. The organisation continues to explore ways to make the hobby more inclusive and user-friendly for all participants. This version will be available through Amazon and is expected to be a useful addition for both seasoned operators and newcomers looking for a more accessible logging option. For WIA National News in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
We are VK1WIA. Now, operational news with VK4FUQ. Felix.
Hello there. Now, contest-wise 2025. We'll start by hearing from VK4SN with the results.
Hi, this is Alan, VK4 Sierra November, with the Trans-Tasman contest results and more. This year, operators experienced good propagation and low noise on the bands. A total of 61 logs were entered containing 4,752 QSOs. A full report containing my report, certificates for both VK and ZL, and an error log report are available for download from the WIA Trans-Tasman contest page. So have a look, print your certificate and see where mistakes were made. For soapbox comments and statistics, see vklogchecker.com. Our top 3 winners in each category are, for single operator high power, VK4 Mike, Victor Lima 5 Lima, and VK1 Oscar Zulu. For single op low power, VK2 Mike Tango, VK3 Golf Juliet Golf, and VK5 Lima Juliet. For single op QRP, VK3 Tango Uniform November, VK2 India Oscar, and VK2 Whiskey Yankee. For multi-single, VK3 Kilo Kilo, VK3 III, and VK2 Alpha Oscar Juliet. For multi-multi, Victor Lima 4 Romeo, VK4 Papa, and VK2 Alpha Tango Zulu. This year I've introduced a youth subsection, and congratulations go to our winner, James, Victor Kilo 3 Juliet Foxtrot Romeo. No sooner has the Trans-Tasman finished, now the Remembrance Day contest is almost upon us. Remembrance Day is held on the 16th and 17th of August. Put that in your diary for our 0300 Zulu start while we remember those who paid the supreme sacrifice. A youth category has also been introduced this year. All the necessary information is on the WIA contest pages. Best 73s, this is Alan, VK4 Sierra November.
Thanks, Alan. Now again, that RD and the dates are 16th and 17th August. This year, International Lighthouse and Light Show Weekend will run from 0001 hours UTC on the 16th of August to 2400 hours UTC on the 17th of August. The event usually attracts more than 500 lighthouse entries located in over 40 countries. Oceania DX OCDX Contest. The Oceania DX Contest is managed by the Oceania DX Contest Committee. Oceania stations may contact any station for QSO points, whilst non-Oceania stations are required to contact any station in Oceania for QSO points. The contest runs over the first 2 full weekends in October and has SSB, CW and SWL categories. Yoda Contest. Organised by the IAA Regional 1 Youth Working Group in cooperation with the Hungarian Amateur Radio Society, The aim of the Yoda contest is to increase youngsters' activity on the air, strengthen the reputation of the Yoda program, and demonstrate support for youngsters across the planet. The final session of this year's Yoda contest will be held 29 December. Now the DX window to the world. VI8 POL on the air 13 to 29 September. Paul VK5 PAS joins us.
Special event call Victor India 8 Papa Oscar Lima will be on air from Saturday 13th of September 2025 to Monday 29th of September 2025 to celebrate the 8th annual National Police Week in Australia. National Police Week 2025 is a celebration of our nation's police. National Police Week includes National Police Remembrance Day, held on Monday 29th of September 2025. It is a day dedicated to honouring and remembering police officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. This day serves as a tribute to their bravery, dedication and ultimate sacrifice in the pursuit of public safety and justice. Sadly, a total of 827 police officers have been killed on duty in Australia. It is also a time to remember police officers who have lost their lives through illness or other circumstances. Victor India 8 Papa Oscar Lima will be on air on the HF bands on sideband and the digital modes. The station will also be operated from significant police historical sites in South Australia. QSL is via VK5PAS. More information on VI8POL can be found on QRZ.com. Thanks for listening. 73 Pole VK5 Papa Alpha Sierra.
Once again, special call sign 4A2 MAX will be activated August 1 to 31 in remembrance of St. Maximilian Maria Kolbe. Activities on 86 metres, SSB, CW and digital. Born in 1894, Father Kolbe, SP3RN, was killed on the 14th of August 1941 at Auschwitz. QSL via LOTW, EQSL, QRZ logbook or via EA5GL. Croatia. 9A169 Tesla. This is a special call sign that will be used until 31 December in celebration of the 169th anniversary since the birth of Nikola Tesla, 10 July 1856. QSOs will be uploaded to LOTW, Club Log and QRZ logbook. Cats and dogs. During the month of August, especially around 8 August, International Cat Day, and 26 August, International Dog Day, a number of stations will be active to raise awareness of pets in need, those who have been abused, abandoned or neglected, and to encourage adoption for those who have yet to find a home and a family forever. Special cat call signs include DA0CAT, DL0CAT, GB4CAT, GB9CAT, W1C, and YL1CAT. Special dog call signs include DA0DOG, DL0DOG, GB4DOG, K2D, and YL1DOG. For WIA National News, I'm Felix VK4FUQ Inningham.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now, special interest group news with Bruce, VK3FFF.
And a very good day to you. Worldwide special interest groups Astronomy and Wireless Weather. Here's one for wallpaper chasers. Members of the Radio Amateur Association of Western Greece are operating a special event station, SX17 Astro, until the 8th of August for the 17th Pan-Hellenic Expedition of Amateur Astronomers. On July the 22nd, 2025, Earth completed its rotation 1.34 milliseconds faster than the standard 24-hour day, making it the second shortest day on record since precise atomic clock measurements began in 1973. This continues a puzzling trend observed since 2020, during which Earth has repeatedly broken its own speed records. The shortest day to date was July the 5th, 2024, some 1.66 milliseconds short. While day-length variations are not new over geologic time, the recent acceleration defies easy explanation and may point to changes deep within the planet. Worldwide special interest groups, balloons. In the UK, National Coding Week takes place in the third week of September, and the RSGB is dedicating a whole month to amateur radio and coding activities. As a part of the Society's strategy to encourage practical skills development, it is inviting hams to take part in its LoRa, L-O-R-A, High Altitude Balloon Challenge. The project takes place on Saturday the 20th of September. The balloon will be equipped with a LoRa digipeater, and the challenge is to follow the instructions provided and build a LoRa tracker. If your tracker build is successful, it will beam up packets to the airborne relay, which will transmit them to a local iGate. Your goal is to get your signal the furthest distance from the launch. Anyone can enter, but to win one of the prizes, you need to be an RSGB member. And close to home in September, in fact, in Hobart, the Reese Club will have a presentation on weather balloon chasing. This by Steve, VK700, Anders, VK7TCP, and Stephen, VK7SH. There are hundreds of weather balloons with radiosondes launched every day around the world to help meteorological and aviation understand what is going on in our atmosphere. These balloons are one-use devices, and the balloon eventually bursts and the radiosonde comes back to Earth on a parachute. They transmit on the 75-centimetre band and can be picked up using a modest receiver and antenna. Some amateurs have even repurposed the transmitters for amateur beacons on 70 centimetres. When? September the 3rd, 2025, from 7:30 p.m. And where? Queen's Domain Club Rooms, and streams on the Reest YouTube channel. Worldwide special interest groups, IOTA, and some IOTA OC reminders. OC 013, Steve ZL2KE, will again be active from Rarotonga as E51KEE during August the 3rd to 18th, to be exact. OC 065, Lance W7GJ, will be active as H40GJ from Pigeon Island, OC 065, Tumotu Province on the 8th to 27th of August. This will be a 6-metre EME de-expedition using Q65-60A in the Q65 pile-up mode. Worldwide special interest groups, Maritime, HMAS Vampire update. VK2VMP is the call sign of the amateur radio station operating on the historic HMAS Vampire, birthed at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. The station has recently undergone a communications upgrade with the installation of a new off-centre fed dipole antenna. This replaces the previous antenna, which had deteriorated due to the prolonged exposure to the harsh marine environment. Listen out for VK2 VMP on Saturdays, 7150 kHz SSB and 7030 kHz CW. Worldwide special interest groups, Radio Amateur Old-Timers, and it's to our man in the south.
Hello everyone, this is Peter, VK7PD, reminding you that tomorrow is the first Monday of the month. Time for the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia August Bulletin to go to air. First up this month, as well as the latest club news, is an article about former Amateur Radio magazine editor Bill Rice, VK3ABP Maritime Mobile on Lake Eyre, with an introduction by Bill's son, Peter, VK3ABP. This will be followed by an article about electrolytic capacitors read by Clive Wallace, VK6CSW. In addition, there will be details on the upcoming Perth RAOTC luncheon, as well as what to expect in the latest edition of OTN, the club's journal. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the program and join in the callbacks afterwards. Full details of all transmissions times and modes can be found on the RAOTC website at www.raotc.org.au or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of the transmission times suits you, you can download the audio file at any time from today from the club's website. Once again, tune in tomorrow for the August RAOTC bulletin. Enjoy the program and please join in the callbacks afterwards. 73 from Peter, VK7PD.
Thanks, Peter. Now to a couple of young timers, Alec, VK2MV, and Alan, VK2COD.
Thank you, Bruce. Good news, Alan, for all our Yoda listeners.
What is it, Alec?
I have seen on the WIA website that the Remembrance Day contest has a rule change. The manager, Alan Shannon, VK4 Sierra November, will provide awards for the top 3 youth entries.
That is great news, Alec. We need to encourage all our Yodas to get involved in the contest. As our listeners may know, the RD contest honours the amateurs who paid the ultimate sacrifice during World War II. It is held on the weekend closest to the 15th August, the day on which hostilities ceased in the Southwest Pacific area.
This year it will be on the 16th and the 17th of August. Unfortunately, I will be on a BIV that weekend with Army cadets, so I have to miss this year's RD contest.
What a shame, Alec. However, Uncle Kempy VK4 Baker says there's lots more to this news article.
You and Uncle Kempy are right, Alan. I have some great news from the Fisher's Ghost Amateur Radio Club.
Tell us about it, Alec.
The club has set up a VK Yoda contest. The contest is to run the full month of December and is designed to encourage Yodas to make contact on the air.
Sounds great, Alec. I am sure our listeners can find out more about this news contest on the Fisher's Ghost website, as the link is in our text edition.
They sure can, Alan. For WIA National News, I am Alec, VK2MV.
And I am Alan, VK2COD. Now back to you, Bruce.
Thank you, gentlemen. Worldwide Special Interest Groups Rescue Radio. Radio Amateurs of Canada is proud to announce the development of the Auxiliary Communication Service in Ontario, alongside a comprehensive new recruitment and retention plan. This initiative is part of the Ontario Government's $10 million investment in emergency preparedness grants, aimed at enhancing the response capabilities of Ontario core partners across the province. This service will be instrumental in supporting local emergency responders and ensuring communities are better prepared to respond to local emergencies. Worldwide Special Interest Groups Video. ARIS SSTV Series 28 ran from July the 14th to 20th, 2025, transmitting 12 commemorative images from the International Space Station. The event drew strong global interest, with more than 8,650 images submitted to the ARIS Gallery. Europe led with 42% of submissions, followed by Asia 23%, North America 12%, and here in Oceania 4%. All 7 continents were represented. Yes, Antarctica had 0.1%. Demonstrating SSTV's remarkable accessibility with modest equipment. I'm Bruce, VK3FFF in sunny but very cold Bendigo.
This is the Wireless Institute of Australia and VK1WIA.
Hi, this is Nathan, VK5OG, President of the South Coast Amateur Radio Club. We're making some changes to our club meeting nights. The third Thursday of the month, we will no longer be meeting. Instead, the third Wednesday, we'll be meeting for coffee at McLaren Vale Visitor Centre, McLaren Vale, from 10 a.m. All is welcome. We hope to see you there. This has been Nathan, VK5OG, President of the South Coast Amateur Radio Club.
It's a date and clubs are welcome to email text for this section. Just send the text and the audio to nationalnews@wia.org.au. The social scene for August-October 2025, VK4, Redcliffe Car Boot Sale, Saturday the 30th of August at the Clubhouse. Also VK4, Sunfest at BY Community Hall, 25 Peachester Road, 9:30, September 13. The WIA affiliated clubs briefing webinar, September 14, 4 to 5 p.m. West Lakes Field Day, 8 a.m, October 26 at the West Lakes Club Grounds. VK5 AREG's Amateur Radio Electronic Sale, Sunday, October 26, and the VKFF National Get-Together, October 24-27 in Canberra. Now till next we meet, I am Graham, I'm VK4BB. Walk softly.
From Australia, this has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5 BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
Greetings, listeners. This is VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia, with this month's news and information bulletin for members and friends of the club for August 2025. I am Andrew, a VK3 Charlie Alpha Hotel. Details on when to hear the news and information bulletins are available at the club's website, www.raotc.org.au. VK3OTN is available on a wide range of radio platforms, HF, VHF and UHF, along with 2-metre repeaters, amateur television, DMR, that is digital mobile radio, and D-Star. These news broadcasts are available for download for up to 6 months, just in case you missed the original news broadcast from the RAOTC website. Just put RAOTC into your favourite search engine. If you'd like to contact the club, then why not send us an email? Our address is raotc@raotc.org.au. I hope you enjoy this month's news broadcast. Welcome to the latest club news for August 2025. Perth Luncheons. The popular and well-attended monthly luncheon for RAOTC members and friends in and around Perth are held on the second Tuesday of each month. Please note the venue change. The new venue, 7 Mile Bar and Bistro, was a success, with quite a few members turning up for a very enjoyable lunch and a chat for the July luncheon. The new location suited most of the members, and the food and service were excellent. The vote was to return next month, so the venue was booked for Tuesday, the 12th of August. The 7 Mile Bar and Bistro is at 501 Wanneroo Road, Balcatta. Their website can easily be found by Googling 7 Mile Bar and Bistro. In addition to the main menu, a seniors menu is also available. There is ample parking available in the adjacent car park. The venue is located on Wanneroo Road near the Reed Highway intersection and is readily accessible with car parking available. Since Wanneroo Road is a main thoroughfare for the northern suburbs, public transport via bus is also a viable alternative. The appropriate route and timetable information can be accessed from the Transperth website. A copy of the URL is located on our website. Alasdair, VK6ATX, is coordinating the lunch, and it would be appreciated if Alasdair could be notified of those planning to attend to ensure that adequate seating is provided. We look forward to seeing many of you at the August RATC luncheon. Alasdair's email address is vk6kif@bigpond.com. bigpond.com. I'll repeat that. Victor Kilo 6 Kilo India Foxtrot at bigpond.com. Overdue subscriptions. The last time I spoke to you in June, I drew your attention to the extra burden passed on to the membership officer and the cost of the reminder letters and follow-up letters sent via Australia Post. The additional postage costs have to be borne by the remaining members of the club who pay their dues in a timely fashion. Well, here's a teeny-weeny update to this information. Last time I checked in May, it cost $1.50 to buy a stamp and send a standard letter. Unfortunately, the RATC does not qualify for any type of concession that some older folk enjoy. It just pays the full rate. Because of the increased use of email that the majority of people use for pretty much everything, from business correspondence to utility bills, Australia Post carry significantly fewer letters than in past years, with many households receiving fewer than 2 letters per week. The cost of running the postal service hasn't gone down very much, and one area that Aussie Post has shaved a few pennies off is by making deliveries every 2 business days, and this may well become every 3rd day in the near future. Nonetheless, they lose money. However, as it's a government-owned enterprise, you and I pick up the bill. This resulted recently in an announcement that the cost of sending a standard letter will rise to $1.70 sometime in July. It's not really clear as yet as to how this will impact on the mailing out of OTN, but committee anticipates that this will go up. September OTN. Our editorial team has advised of what you can expect in the upcoming September edition of Old Timers News, or OTN, the club's twice-yearly journal. Paul Edwards, a VK7ZAJ, has written a great article about moving his station and downsizing his antennas at a new QTH, and Tim Robinson has written an article about the first radio transmission in Tasmania in 1901. There is also a detailed article by Justin Giles Clark, a VK7TW, regarding Frederick Medhurst, one of the pioneer amateur radio operators in Tasmania. In 2023, Tasmania celebrated a centenary of organised amateur radio in VK7, which amongst other things recognised Medhurst's contribution to amateur radio in that state. Bill Roper, VK3BR, has an article on scanning and repairing early pre-word processor editions of OTN, and is also an interesting read. These archive editions of OTN are now also available from the download service for members only. This is a good time to remind you that purchasing the flash drive with all editions of OTN will provide hours of fun reading and provide an insight into the development of OTN over the years. You can then keep the flash drive up to date by downloading the colour editions of OTN hot off the press from the RATC website. Invitation to prospective new members. For those listeners that aren't a member of RATC, you can go to our website and download a sample copy of the club's journal, OTN, edition number 70. Simply go to www.raotc.org.au and click on Old Timers News in the main menu. Also, there is a sample copy of an article from the latest edition of OTN. And now, if you're not a member, you can see what you're missing out on. Melbourne September Luncheon and Hybrid AGM. The upcoming September Luncheon and Hybrid AGM will be held on September 18 at the Caulfield RSL here in Melbourne. It will be a 2-course meal at a cost of $36 per head. Tea, coffee and hot chocolate will be included. Soft drinks, beer, wine and other drinks can be purchased from the bar. Details will be published in OTN and are available on the club's website www.ratc.org.au. If you see it on Instagram, X or Facebook, check with the details with the club's website or in the September OTN. Luncheon speaker. Peter Wolfenden, VK3RV, the WIA historian, will present an illustrated talk titled Wireless in the Sky about early Australian airborne wireless activity. Peter will talk about some interesting and significant amateur radio history unknown to most of us from almost 100 years ago. It includes associations with early aeronautical wireless communication experiments together with the various techniques employed at the time. It provides a glance back at a few significant amateurs who contributed to the establishment of the first known wireless communication stations at Essendon Airfield, with the consequent involvement with an air race across Australia which attracted international entries. He'll also talk about the RAAF Wireless Reserve that formally came into existence about that time. It was an initiative of the WIA. New members and silent keys. Unfortunately, I have not been advised of any new members this month. I regret to inform you that Bill Jamieson, previously VK3 Hotel X-Ray, member number 1117, became a silent key on the 19th of June 2025. Let us pause a moment in memory of our departed colleague. And that's about all the club news we have for you this month.
You are listening to VK3OTN and associated relay stations. VK3OTN is the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club, Australia Incorporated, with the monthly news and information bulletin for members and friends of the club.
This month we have a couple of interesting technical articles for you. First up is an article about former Amateur Radio Magazine editor Bill Rice of VK3 ABP, Maritime Mobile on Lake Eyre, with an introduction by Bill's son, Peter, who has taken over his dad's call sign of VK3 ABP. This will be followed by an article about electrolytic capacitors read by Clive Wallace of VK6 CSW. I hope you enjoy both of these articles. So now, let's hand the microphone over to Peter of VK3 ABP.
Thanks, Andrew. This is Peter Rice, VK3ABP. Often, significant DX amateur radio transmissions occur due to ephemeral atmospheric conditions, but it's not often significance is due to them being broadcast from an ephemeral salt lake. Yet last month, on the 14th of May 2025, there was the 50th anniversary of just that, when my dad, Bill Rice, VK3ABP, now silent key, broadcast Maritime Mobile from a Red Baron catamaran under sail on Cutty Thunder, Lake Eyre North in 1975, on Arabana country in northern South Australia. It's sacred country. And, with permission granted by Arabana elders in 2008, where my silent key dad's ashes remain. Lake Eyre is currently receiving water from recent major flooding in northern Australia, but still may not fill to match the volume of water which was there in 1975. We can hope, despite restrictions on sailing and even going near the lake now. Let Bill tell you more from a QSO with Snow Campbell, VK3MR, also now silent key, in Melbourne, recorded on May the 14th, 1975, while sailing on Lake Eyre. You can hear water splashing against the hulls.
Yeah, Roger Snow, VK3 Mike Roger in Melbourne, VK3 Alpha Bravo Papa, VK3 Able Baker Peter, Maritime Mobile 5 on Lake Eyre returning. All okay, Snow, your signal's readability 5, strength 9. We are underway, under sail, in Madigan Gulf, in the southeast corner of Lake Eyre at the present time. We have at least 10 feet of water underneath us, probably more than 10 feet of water underneath us, and making about 5 knots very, very nicely. Running about 50 watts peak, possibly not even that, using the mast off the boat as the antenna through a transmatch, and it's about a 20-foot mast, and using the lake water as a ground through a small ground electrode under one of the hulls. So that's the story, Snow. Name here is Bill, Bravo India Lima Lima. Bill is the name, and wonder how you copy there in Melbourne. VK3MR, VK3ABP, Maritime Mobile 5, Lake Air.
Video of that excerpt can be seen in a short film called On Air, EYRE, made at the time by Bill and Tim Robinson, VK3YBP, which also in May 2025 was accepted into the Australian National Film and Sound Archive. Tim Robinson has recently indicated to me that the film may also be possibly uploaded to the Digital Library of Amateur Radio Communications. It's sure not often that telephony of amateur radio communications is heard 50 years since first broadcast, let alone any from a boat once sailing on what is still, mostly even now, normally a dry salt lake claypan. For RAOTC News, I am Peter Rice, VK3ABP. Back to you, Andrew.
You are listening to VK3OTN. VK3OTN is the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club, Australia, Incorporated, with the monthly news and information bulletin for members and friends of the club.
And now, over to Clive, VK6CSW, with the most interesting article he wrote for publication in a future issue of OTN magazine. The electrolytic capacitor. Listeners will be familiar with electrolytic capacitors, but like me, may be unfamiliar with their origin and development. However, a little digging around offered some enlightenment, and I hope that you find the following of some interest. The main advantage of the electrolytic capacitor, or condensers as we once called them, is large capacitance with small bulk. Disadvantages are the necessity, in most cases, for correct polarization and inability to work satisfactorily at high frequencies, restricting their use mainly to power supplies and audio frequencies, usually in a decoupling role. Conventional capacitors have two metallic plates separated by an insulating dielectric. The higher the dielectric constant, and the thinner that the dielectric can be made without electrical breakdown, the greater the capacity that can be achieved per unit volume. The secret of the electrolytic capacitor is that instead of using a bulk dielectric such as air, mica, or polymer film, etc., its dielectric depends upon the forming and maintaining of a microscopic metal oxide layer. The maintenance and the integrity of this layer depend upon the application of a correctly polarized DC voltage. Unless the capacitor is specially constructed as a non-polarized type, reversing the polarity or applying too high a voltage will cause the oxide film to break down or rupture, leading to failure. Many types of electrolytics use a wet chemistry and eventually fail as the water evaporates. Although there appears to be no clear inventor of the electrolytic capacitor, the principle was discovered by Carroll, otherwise known as Charles, Pollack. In 1886, as part of his research into the protection of aluminium and other metals by anodizing, he discovered that there was a very high capacitance between the aluminium and the electrolyte solution due to the thin layer of aluminium oxide formed. Unfortunately, once the electrolyzing voltage was removed, most electrolytes simply dissolved the oxide layer, but after much experimentation, Pollack found that sodium borate, or borax, would not of itself attack the oxide layer. 11 years later, in 1897, Pollack was granted a patent for the borax solution aluminium electrolytic condenser. The new technology was first used as starting capacitors for single-phase AC motors. Although most electrolytic capacitors are polarized, that is, they can only be operated with direct current, by separately anodizing aluminium plates and then interleaving them in a borax bath, it's possible to make a capacitor that can be used in AC systems. Today we would refer to this as a bipolar or non-polarized electrolytic. Pollack's electrolytic condenser would not be of much use today. It was very bulky, built rather like a car battery, and needed topping up with distilled water from time to time.
but a DC version of it was used in early telephone exchanges, where its large capacity helped to dampen the hash caused by relays. The usual power source for these exchanges was 48 volts DC, delivered from a bank of lead-acid accumulators, so polarizing the condensers was not a problem. The introduction of AC mains-powered wireless receivers in the late 1920s required smoothing condensers of around 4 microfarads and rated up to 500 volts working in order to minimize mains hum. Although these could be made using the aluminium foil with waxed paper or oiled silk dielectric technology commonly used for these small value condensers, condensers of this large capacity and high voltage rating were bulky and extremely expensive. In 1926, Julius Edgar Lilienfeld, an Austro-Hungarian physicist domiciled in America, designed the ancestor of the modern electrolytic condenser. After several years of experimental work, in 1931 he was granted a US patent for an electrolytic condenser. His design was similar in construction to the silver mica condenser of that era, but used layers of electrolyte-soaked paper in contact with aluminium foil in place of the mica dielectric. Sealing was inadequate, however, and the hot environment of valve receivers meant that these condensers quickly dried out and failed. A highly successful American mechanical and electrical engineer named Ralph Davenport Mershon, well known for his work in the design and manufacture of early high-voltage AC power generating and transmission systems, is generally credited with producing the first really successful radio electrolytic condenser. He became a master of the art of building capacitors, vitally important in power transmission systems and also in radio electronics. Between 1911 and 1942, he was granted 55 patents. Around 1929, his Mershon condensers featured in the power supply of the popular Crossley brand radios, greatly suppressing the 60 Hz mains hum. The Mershon condenser was constructed like a conventional paper capacitor, made with 2 long strips of aluminium foil interwound with strips of insulating paper, but with the paper saturated with electrolyte rather than wax. To overcome the need for perfect sealing to prevent the electrolyte drying out, Mershon fitted the capacitor inside an oversized copper or aluminium container, half filled with extra electrolyte. Today, these wet electrolytics are prized collector's items. Unfortunately, poor seals led to a fairly short service life, and also the capacitors could not be left unenergized for long periods without deterioration. If left unused for more than a few months, the Mershons had to be reformed with a carefully controlled polarizing voltage. I'm sure that at least some listeners have tales to tell of dried out, exploding wet electrolytics, and many of us are familiar with the gentle art of reforming electrolytics. Nevertheless, although Mershon's idea was fundamentally sound, due to manufacturing difficulties, his company went bankrupt in the early 1930s and was bought up by Magnavox. The necessity for compact, dependable electrolytics in World War II electronic equipment brought about some serious research, culminating in a highly reliable product. A major advance was the process of etching and pre-anodizing the foil prior to assembly, and the use of less corrosive electrolytes, together with improved sealing techniques, allowing electrolytics a longer, unenergized shelf life without significant deterioration. Even so, it was a wise precaution to reform them, especially large capacity ones, by applying a small polarizing current for an hour or two prior to putting them into service. The development of gel and solid electrolytes further improved the capacitance per unit volume. Post-war, another increase in capacitance per unit volume was obtained by using porous, sintered aluminium pellets to increase the active area in contact with the electrolyte. However, during manufacture, the capacity tolerance of sintered types could not be as well controlled as the standard types using wet or dry electrolytes. In the early 1950s, Bell Laboratories saw that transistors low voltage circuits and miniaturization were the way of the future, and sought to develop a much more compact electrolytic capacitor. The result was the tantalum capacitor. Today, tantalum capacitor production consumes more than half the world's total production of this metal. Instead of chemically etching the foil, as was done in aluminium capacitors, the surface area of the tantalum was increased by compacting finely divided tantalum powder into a porous slug and then sintering the powder particles together at about 2000 degrees centigrade, while maintaining much of the slug's porosity. After sintering, the dielectric film was electrochemically grown onto the slug's internal and external surfaces, giving a compact element with a remarkably high surface area. Although the original tantalums used a wet electrolyte, this was soon replaced with a dry or solid one. For a given capacity and working voltage, a tantalum capacitor can be at least 3 times smaller than its aluminium counterpart. Further development has seen tantalum capacitors shrink even further, and very small surface mount devices components are now available. Tantalums are even less tolerant of reverse polarization than are aluminium types. If reverse polarized from a substantial current source, a tantalum may explode, catch fire, and release a cloud of white smoke. If, like me, you have experienced this, you'll know exactly what I mean. Today, 3 styles of tantalum are available: wet foil, wet anode, and solid anode. The wet foil type is made by a process similar to that of aluminium electrolytic capacitor production. These capacitors can withstand voltages of up to 300 volts DC. Packaged in tantalum cases, they are expensive and are used mainly for military, aerospace, and high reliability applications. Wet anode types are made